Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a representative from Team 4 Consulting, here to speak to you about GE in India. Our case study was GE Energy's decision to re-enter India if opportunity is just blowing in the wind. And I'm here to present on our findings and the strategies we've considered in re-entering India. As an overview of the wind energy market in India, India, like many other developed and developing nations, is certainly concerned with their carbon footprint and have taken great strides to reduce carbon emissions by utilizing renewable energy sources. The wind energy market in India has great potential and has been estimated to be 48,000 megawatts that can be installed for the wind farms, and they've tapped into about half of that 48,000. Currently they have 24,376 megawatts installed, and they have certainly reached their goal of having 10% of their renewable energy, or 10% of their total power generating capacity come from renewable energy. And a vast majority of that renewable energy is utilized from wind power sources. Also, to promote the growth of the wind industry, the government has enacted multiple regulations that will subsidize and encourage growth in the wind energy market. This has created a humongous demand, which has skyrocketed in the last couple of decades, and has been met with poor supply chains, though. The supply doesn't reach the demand, so the cost of wind turbines has skyrocketed due to the high demand and low supply. This graph illustrates a global trend in the wind energy production or installation. As you can see, especially after the turn of the millennium, there's been a steady, almost exponential growth in the wind energy sector, as we are nearing 400,000 megawatts of total capacity. In 1992, India, by the CEO of GE, was declared a priority GE country to be invested in. And GE has several industries and a vested interest in India, and is very familiar with the market, but not necessarily the wind energy market. They have struggled severely in trying to establish themselves as a major player in the wind energy market. In 2005, the Indian government declared a 10-year tax holiday for those who invest in wind farms, and that is what geared a lot of people, a lot of investors, into purchasing and having wind farms installed, though they didn't care so much for the actual energy output and operation of those wind farms. So GE had trouble competing in this market, and after a painful stint as the turbine manufacturer, GE decided to bow out of the market in 2005 as they couldn't find investors to purchase their products at a premium. These are some of the regulations that are in place currently that are to help foster growth in the wind energy market. The state feed-in tariffs are tariffs on energy brought into certain states, sort of to encourage them to become more self-sufficient with energy production and to establish wind farms of their own in order to get their own power source. These renewable purchase obligations were the National Action Plan for Climate Change recommended that by 2020, up to 15% of a utility's capacity comes from renewable sources. A majority of key states have put in place the renewable purchase obligations to meet similar requirements. And these renewable energy certificates are awarded when a renewable energy generator generates 1 megawatt of renewable energy and sells it to the grid at a conventional power tariff price. These certificates can actually be traded in open market where obligated entities purchase them to meet their renewable purchase requirements, their obligations. And then also, the National Clean Energy Fund has been established as an integral part of India's overall effort to cut its carbon footprint, finances research and development and of the next generation renewable energy technologies. This map here illustrates the areas best suited for wind farms in the nation. The areas in red are the high wind speed areas, which have all been exhausted. They have installed most of the generators so far in those areas, and now the areas in green are the low wind speed areas, which have not been tapped into nearly as much, and that's where most of the potential comes from now. But in those low wind speed areas, much more advanced and efficient technology is required in order to get the appropriate megawattage from those wind turbines. And GE is definitely one of the entities that has that technology already constructed and made. Earlier this year, India overtook Spain as the 4th largest wind energy provider in the world, with their 24,376 megawatts installed. And from now on, though, they need high efficiency technology in order to install in those low wind speed sites. This is our steep analysis, which I won't delve into too much, but this illustrates several factor endowments and some of the detriments in operating in India. Characteristics like increasingly open market economy, highly educated population, and a large, low-cost workforce are some of the reasons in order to enter and re-enter India, while other issues such as power grid reliability, corruption, and poor infrastructure are some reasons that give us hesitation to fully enter. As you can see in this chart, which shows the major competitors in India, or the competitors in the wind energy market, Suzlon is at 52%, which controls majority of the market, while GE Energy isn't even on the map. 0.3% is what GE Energy could carve out of the wind energy market in India. So Suzlon definitely has the top market share, and Enercon from Denmark and Vestas from Germany are the other 2 major competitors, each with roughly a little over 20% share. 24 for Enercon, 22 for Vestas, I believe. So Suzlon has gained their advantage from having a comprehensive supply chain and localized production for components for the wind farms, wind turbines, which has increased their capital and lowered manufacturing and labor costs. Though in 2004, Suzlon blades began cracking under stress in certain wind conditions, and they experienced serious problems in their global efforts as their reputation became tarnished from these malfunctions, which cost them loss of money from losing contracts or contracts being canceled, and also from millions of dollars of repairs of faulty equipment. This hampered their efforts and growth in the market, but they still are a major and formidable player. Some of the strengths for GE is that we still have presence in the Indian market, or in the Indian country, and other industries. As I said before, India is well known in India, and we have done work on their infrastructure and other aspects too, in health and technology. Our technology in this area is one of our greatest assets, and we're constantly innovating new ways to harness the power of the wind. And we've also been experiencing great financial growth in the past few years. So we have the capital to invest in new ventures, such as the re-entry of India. Our weaknesses here are our extremely low market share, and our previous failure in India may make it harder for us to get back on our feet. There's great opportunities, though, for us in India. A lot of incentives for investors regarding new renewable energy that have been in place. Those will subsidize our production. And we've had major technological improvements as well. We can also learn from Suzlon's flaws and their mistakes and use that to gain an advantage in their market. Also, the popularity of wind energy is growing rapidly in this day and age, as reducing these carbon emissions is becoming more and more imperative for the world and world leaders. Also, in those regards, we can produce, if we decide to re-enter India, we can increase our global production and export those products produced at lower costs around the world, as long as we can make a quality GE product. The 2003 Electricity Act also helped encourage distributors and utilities to buy a specific percentage of power from those renewable energy sources. And since 2006, again, the wind energy, our wind power capacity has doubled. And we're also better at creating a quality product. They just don't make it the way that GE does. Some of our greatest threats, as pointed out before, is definitely Suzlon at 52% market share. They've been, as I said, seeing setbacks, but definitely still a major contender in the market here and in the world as well. They're growing and are the 5th largest in the global market for wind energy production, or turbine production. Another threat is the poor infrastructure will make it very difficult for on-time deliveries and installations, and there's also a long supply chain that we will have to contend with or alleviate by creating and promoting local suppliers. There's also been a low economic growth rate of 7%, and inflation could also constrict the market in the future. That is something we must keep an eye on. So, what to do now? Is this the right time to enter India? And do the risks outweigh potential benefits? Before considering which strategies, we'll consider why we should re-enter. There's still 24,000 roughly megawatts of untapped potential, and that's where we can install wind energy farms. There's also still tax incentives helping with costs and a high demand for these products. And infrastructure issues can also be overcome. GE has investments in India to help improve infrastructure, and slow but steady, the infrastructure in India is improving, and we expect it to continue to improve as the nation develops. Also, one of our strengths that will set us apart from the competition is our technology and the quality of our products. So we might be able to gain the customers that Suzlon lost. And there's still a high demand for high efficiency technology in those low wind speed areas. So we came up with 3 different ways to re-enter India. One would be a greenfield investment and to enter as a supplier, a major supplier in the area, a local supplier in India. Also, that we could consider doing a joint venture with a competitor such as Suzlon in India. And there's also the potential to be a major contender again, and to consider a full entry as a manufacturer, installer, and operator, emulating Suzlon's on-time delivery methods. This shows the exchange rate of the rupee, which has constantly been falling under the US dollar. But this attracts FDI from not just the United States, but from other foreign entities, which will also attract more, since this is a booming market, will mean that more money is entering the Indian economy that could wind up in our pockets. All right, to break down the full entry into the market, we estimate that it would cost between $6.8 and $7.3 billion and would entail establishing major operations and securing strong short supply chain, and it will require a lot of marketing to get back on our feet in India. And this would also mean we would have to get into the practice of on-time deliveries and installments and making sure that everything is running all right in these areas. Some of the downsides definitely include the risk of failure. If we do invest this much money into entering the market on a full scale, there's a lot to be lost. And it's a high risk for potentially high reward, but that high reward is not guaranteed due to the complexity of the Indian market. It'll be difficult to reach Suzlon's installment benchmark, and investors may still not be willing to pay at the GE premium. Another method or entry to consider is as a greenfield investor, and this would be a $3 billion project to invest in 2 factories, one to produce durable blades, high quality blades that would be for the low wind speed areas, and then also we would build a second factory that produces the electrical components that are currently being imported into India, and so far none of the suppliers have the technology to produce these components at a local scale. This will allow us to gain a foothold in the wind energy market without overextending ourselves amongst the copious competition. Some of the drawbacks are that we're not going to be a major player in the selling of turbines, and we'll risk, we can't guarantee that the clients will want to buy a better product. Our joint venture option is a low monetary risk, but low reward as well. We would work with a company such as Suzlon, more than likely since they're a national entity, in exchange of technology for royalty payments. This is not the most recommended course of action because we're taking our strongest asset and leaving it on the table for them to potentially take. And intellectual property laws aren't the most stringent in India yet, so we would risk losing the upper hand in the global scheme of things, in the global market as well, where Suzlon definitely is a major contender in the top 5. So we've decided that our best course of action is to go ahead with the greenfield investment, building the 2 factories. We can sustain our presence throughout the wind energy boom in India and possibly consider expanding our operations in the future and becoming a major installer and try to re-enter the market with full entry later on once we've secured a decent supply chain. The location where we would build these is the city of Pune, which is where Suzlon is headquartered, which we believe would give us a location-specific advantage, and the area is known for its strength in technology and research and innovation. We expect a 15% return on our investment, which would be $450, roughly $500 million, and the profits would come after 10 years. And we would see positive cash flow within 5 years. Well, thank you very much for letting me